Welcome everyone. My name is Manoj Agrawal. I'm the group editor at Banking Frontiers magazine. And today we are having a panel discussion with HR heads from the BFSI industry. And our theme is Frontline. Is that the new boundary where there's going to be a lot of action, there's going to be a lot of challenges, or there are going to be a lot of opportunities? I have with me distinguished HR heads from insurance and banks, and I would request them to introduce themselves.
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm Shwetha Ram. I head HR for Future Generali Life Insurance. I've been with the group for the last 4.5 years, about 18 years of experience in HR, associated with Citibank, Kellogg India, the breakfast company, as in my previous stint. Looking forward to an engaging discussion today. I think the topic is something that is quite interesting because all of us, and especially the ones who are in the life insurance or in the insurance setup, for us, our core population, our core stakeholder is the frontline sales population. They are the ones who make or break the company. So happy to be here, happy to reconnect with all of you.
Hi everyone, so I'm Nagina. I head the business HR vertical for DBS Bank and now Lakshmi Vilas Bank. DBS in India has 3 entities as we speak, actually going to be 2. The banks will integrate sooner than later, and then we have a large tech center in Hyderabad. I've been with them for 3 years, overall 23 years of experience. Financial services is a recent phenomena where I did spend some time in insurance, in a housing finance company and now a bank. But I have experience all over all sectors, barring a few. So pharma, FMCG, life insurance, general insurance, a startup, manufacturing, consulting, and now a bank. Really looking forward to this session to, of course, add value to myself and whatever little that I can do in turn.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Major Akhilesh Guleria. Been in HR for around 20 years or so, with experience, like the title says. I was with Indian Army and the Short Service Commission for 6 years, post which I started my corporate life from retail to banking and insurance. Currently, I am the CHRO for Reliance General Insurance, and it has been around 3.5 years with them. Happy to join the discussion to learn what is going on and how, especially the core, which we define as frontline, right? For me, frontline has a very different perspective also, because I was in infantry and we were the frontline, right? So it is quite passionate. I'm quite passionate with the word as such, a frontline. So happy to learn and be part of this discussion. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jay. I lead HR for Bharati AXA Life Insurance. This is my first stint in the financial services space, although it's already been almost 7 years now. Prior to this, I worked in the manufacturing and FMCG spaces. Glad to be a part of this discussion. Know some of the other panelists, work with them professionally as well. And there are some new faces. Look forward to this discussion. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Soumendra. I'm with ICICI Bank, with the bank for last more than 19 years now, and worked with the oil industry for 5 years before moving into banking. It's been a very interesting journey, especially with the bank, and look forward to this conversation. Looking forward to learning and share whatever I can contribute here. And it's a very interesting area because I think that's not just for the industry. I think it's an issue for the country that we should be looking at here.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Praveen Menon. I head HR at Indiafirst Life. So I head multiple functions, including HR. A function called group sales also rolls up into me. So, I get an opportunity to look at, how things are there on the sales front and try and bring it back to, the HR, processes and policies thereafter. It's my privilege and pleasure to be a part of this August group here. And, it's going to be exciting, enriching. I'm certainly intending to learn a lot from all of you guys.
Thank you, Praveen.
Thank you so much, Manoj. First of all, such a privilege on behalf of NSE Academy to be partner with Banking Frontiers on this very pertinent and thought-provoking conversation today. So very happy to be part of this conversation. And I am here for last 3.5 years. Prior to that, I spent 4 years with the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. and prior to that, many years in banking and financial services industry. NSE Academy is part of the National Stock Exchange, and we are the largest certification accreditation agency in BFSI space anywhere in the globe, more than 70 lakh certifications across. So, and one of the main missions is to provide employability to our youth and also provide the next talent pipeline for the banking and financial services in the country. So it's a personal mission and an organizational mission for us collectively to provide our colleagues here with the next generation of banking and financial service and insurance employees who are the next wave of citizens for the BFSI community.
Thank you, everyone. What have you found the approach to be for the youngsters, for the Gen Y, Gen Z, towards the financial sector, either as a starting point and also as a long-term thing, as a career?
Right. So I was saying that there is, if I think back about a couple of decades back, the number of engineers we were producing as a country, and there were a lot of people who were interested in the basic science and humanities, and engineering was not as prevalent as an option, I would say, at least 25 years back. But today, most people, even if people joining, they do a postgraduate and join us. So we are, as a country, are producing a lot of engineers. So naturally, there is an affinity for the tech industry to draw a lot of people. But what coming back to the specific question, I think the excitement about the banking and financial industry continues at the frontline level. We as a bank, as ICICI Bank, process in hundreds of thousands of people who apply to join the banking industry, even at the frontline level. So the excitement continues, and especially I think there is a lot of interdisciplinary work which is happening across the technology and the financial industry. So that makes it jobs interesting to be in this industry.
I request Nagina to throw some light on this, given your background in so many other industries.
Sure, Manoj. And I think it's not about attracting or retaining talent in the banking industry. I think for those of us work for banks, I think it's time for us to reflect as to whether banking will remain what it used to be. I think that is where the sweet spot is for attraction, retention of the Gen Z or Gen Y. And there's a very popular saying that floats around DBS, which says that the next CEO for the group may not be a banker. And we've sort of proven that very well with tech-enabled solutions coming from within DBS owned tech centers versus going to captives and taking services from other providers. So the banking industry, there's lots to learn from fintech and the new age companies that are coming up. So I think it's not more about what makes it attractive for the Gen Y, Gen Z to stay in the bank, but I think it's more about how do we make our industry attracted to the prospective candidate, and that is going to come on the back of a lot of iterations and upgradations that we would need to do to keep ourselves pace with talent attraction, which is one part, but also to keep pace with the fintechs and the new age industries that are going to give us a run for our money.
So in that sense, perhaps, Nagina, the fintech industry is a competitor for talent as well as a partner, because anyone in the banking sector will get an opportunity to work with fintechs in some way.
Correct. And we are experiencing this as we amalgamate with the Lakshmi Vilas Bank, where the two banks are completely chalk and cheese. We are a digital, tech savvy, very customer interface driven bank, and that's a very physical, branch led 563 branches South based bank, and the talent that we are attracting is very different. And I think that is a story in itself to tell us what new age banking would look like. And what would and for the Gen Z or Gen Y or the new generation, whatever, and I'm a mother of a soon going to be employed engineer, computer science engineer. For him, banking is meaningless. He sometimes asks me a question: why do you work for a bank? I mean, when everything's on a touch of a button, what is your business model? How do you guys make money? Why do the employees come into play? So those are the kind of customers we're going to deal with. And life experiences would mean a lot different for them, including the way they did their banking. So I think it's more inward looking versus trying to carve the market from how we're going to attract and what practices are we going to change from an HR standpoint. I think it's going to be more hard coded than just HR practices and how our business models are going to look like in the future.
Good insights. Thank you, Nagina. Abhilash, may I request your opinion and then your comments on how do you see the youth looking at the financial sector for short-term and long-term opportunities?
On this particular question, I think on the point that Nagina just made is the future of banking. Will the bank stay as it is? Some data points. 75% of the population in the country has bank accounts. And there are close to 1,500 fintechs. To the question that the point that Nagina made, which are providing a layer of introduction to banking services to the unbanked across the country. This is the last report in 2020 that I saw. But the question here is 75% of our population that has bank accounts is financially uneducated. It doesn't have access to financial literacy or financial education. Hence, the flip side is that 50% approximately of the bank accounts are inactive. Now, this is where the role of technology, appreciation of digital banking, appreciation of frontline people who, even if they're not exactly salespeople, are the ones who contact a particular client. And look at that part of society today, which is, of course, accessing digital banking, but cannot move from their home to go to a bank. Senior citizens, for that matter, people who are physically challenged. The pandemic has made the situation more worse. So the point I'm trying to here, put as a thought process is there's a huge opportunity for frontline bankers and financial services, customer relationship people. We only account mostly for people in frontline as sales, but they are the first point of contact for a customer in the marketplace. They could be a customer service agent. They could be a technology person helping a bank customer solve a problem. They could be salespeople also. What I'm trying to say is that's our mission, making people financially aware, financially educated so that they're able to take better financial decisions. And this entire ecosystem could be. Some of my thoughts here, Manoj.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Abhilash. So, Akhilesh, how do you see potential candidates who want to enter the financial sector, they need to imbibe obviously functional skills. And because this is a very service-oriented sector, they also need a lot of engagement skills, human skills, engagement skills, ability to speak and listen and handle a situation. There are many times there are angry customers, and you can just tell them that these are the rules of banking. And so that doesn't work in today's world. It could have worked 10, 15 years ago. So with that transformation happening, how do you see some kind of cultural change or some kind of competencies being acquired by candidates to handle the real world, which kind of is a new real world?
So one is on the very with the previous question you had asked. I think definition of frontline, like many of the panelists here, like Nagina and I think Abhilash also mentioned. The definition of frontline actually will depend upon company to company. It's I'll say the evolution stage or the maturity stage of that company within that industry and the digital ecosystem which it operates. Because what would be a frontline for me may not be the same for Nagina in say DBS or even with the Lakshmi Vilas Bank. The definitions would be totally different, right? So this will actually define the what is a frontline for an organization. That's for a company specific or industry specific, I'll say. But once we come to BFSI, I feel the question now, the second which you have linked. See, attracting talent to BFSI, everybody is here from BFSI or work. I'll be very candid that today the BFSI, especially the insurance or the frontline sales, as we say in few of the banking also, where it is exactly still reaching out to get a CASA account and moving around to build saving accounts, going to CAs to get the leads and all those stuff which carry on. First is that to make the industry attractive. So today, like I think Nagina said, his son said that why are you working for bank? And if you ask him whether banking would be a preferred job for him or an industry, he may or he may not. It may not be even in the top 5, right? So generations, in the younger generation, when we have to define, right? It has to be very clear. It has to be made very attractive, right? And the skills, now coming to the second point which you had mentioned, we can only make it attractive if we actually show a very clear-cut career growth to these people, right? We have seen people coming through many professional courses, like I think Abhilash and their NSE is doing a remarkable work, right, in getting the competencies or skills. I would say first is the skills, literacy about financial sector and making them employable, right? That is one thing. Second is the career which a company can offer, because we have seen people coming from these channels or freshers, right? Within you'll say 3 to 5 years, 50% of them are not working in the same industry. And these are the numbers which I think Abhilash will be able to tell very clearly, that the I'll say continuity of these people, right, becomes a question mark, right? Now coming on to the competencies, changing times, because your question was very, three things were connected to it. So that's why I'm breaking it down. I don't want to take much of time with your Maggie rule there and everybody to participate. The third thing is, yes, skill and competencies are very critical. But when we say, the frontline freshers, or we have to divide it between experienced guys and freshers, I think skills are more important. Product knowledge is very important for people to address to, because lack of knowledge, and if you hit the customer, at least you have a rule book to tell that this is, permissible, this is not. But with lack of knowledge, you will not be able to stand either a conversation with him or her, right? And, convert, or whether you are in customer service or sales, it will not lead anywhere, right? So competencies can be, developed, but the skill, when we hire for correct attitude and the product knowledge of that particular industry or the company is will be very critical for successfully employing these people for more than 3 to 5 years, and where they can start seeing the careers getting shaped up right on the front line. So I will reserve my comments here only, while there are few thoughts on frontline which we maybe address later in another question.
What do you see as the attrition rate in these times, and how do you think it will be in the next 2, 3, 4 years? And let's talk more about frontline employees and people in the organization. Current scenario and future scenario. What do you see like?
What we see today, especially let's assume post-COVID, or if we were to say that the COVID is still not out, it's not gone out, then, during COVID, is that industry agnostic, there's a war for talent, isn't it? According to a research done by McKinsey in September 2021, what they say is that 40% of the employees are going to leave or are considering to quit their job in next 6 months. And the irony is that nearly 2/3 of them actually would do so without a job in hand. Okay, and frontline employees in various organizations are actually, it seems, finding less purpose in their work, and hence they are susceptible to early attrition. Okay, now, and Generation Z that we talked about, and generation and the millennials, the guys who are coming into the workforce, they are more these days driven by wider work-life balance, a strong sense of purpose, be it flexibility, adaptability, etc., and even autonomy of work, right? Now, when there is a tendency of, or the thoughts of the millennial population in such a manner, then the fact of the matter is that the suitable candidates in the front line is on a decreasing trend. The other piece, I mean, the complete oxymoron to that would be, especially in the insurance industry, we call it as a sunrise industry, because India per se as a country is a very underpenetrated, has an underpenetrated market. Now, if it is sunrise industry, then of course, a lot of people would be wanting to build their careers in the industry. So that works well for the industry. But with a thought process of saying that, okay, if I don't find a sense of purpose, a belonging, all those other, behavioral attributes in that sense, then the question is that how do you attract and make sure that this talent stays with you? Now, Nagina actually mentioned that, and she actually said the fact that the new age generation would question, saying that, okay, how the business needs to be done. Now, of course, India as a country also is a young country, isn't it? So the service and the product offering that companies actually are doing, the end consumer also would be young generation. Now, when they are recipients of this service and these products, when they become the employees, the ask from them also would be, according to what they are consuming it, right? So, the organizations currently, if you ask me, it's kind of, they're trying to grapple with these challenges, not just because of the fact that you're not able to get people. You may still be able to get people, but whether those set of people who you get are going to be there with you for a longish period of time and build careers with you is a question mark. And so a balancing of many behavioral attributes that I talked about, plus a way that you can hand over the baton of career management instead of it being with the organization, but give it to the respective employee and tell them, saying that what do you want to do hereafter in your life, put pit stops and milestones, is something which organizations are grappling to, come out with this blueprint. But I think going forward, possibly that would be the way ahead.
Thank you, Praveen. What is the youngsters think about the industry as a whole, and what is the organization doing to make itself attractive and not just be part of the industry?
So, Manoj, I think frontline workforce as a concept, has, I think, undergone a huge change. There was a time when that's where people would start their careers and they would, grow through the ranks, they would do well. And there would always be, a filter at various levels, and then a handful of you would rise up to pick up leadership positions. The challenge now is, with the proliferation of B schools across the country and a large population of graduates opting to go on to do MBA programs, the choice of frontline roles as a career choice to start with becomes very unattractive. I don't think there is any individual who would do an MBA. Obviously, there is a cost attached to it, and then would agree to come back to perform a frontline role regardless of the industry. It becomes all the more challenging when we are talking about industry like insurance, which traditionally has not been attractive for youth. And I would say it's a vicious cycle. A lot of insurance companies have tried hiring freshers. Some have succeeded, some have not. And they believe that a certain amount of maturity, a certain amount of gravitas is required when you are going and selling a fairly high value product, I would say. The average ticket size, which would make a product profitable and also make it meaningful from a life cover point of view, is anything upwards of 25 to 30,000. Now, you would not hand out a 25,000 check to a 20-year-old, right? I mean, you would want somebody who knows his business, who can, talk from experience, to give you that confidence before you can enter into a long term. And it's not just a year. The expectation is that you pick out that check year after year for about 10 to 12 years. Now, hence, I would say attracting youth, and again, there are 20 life insurance companies alone, and all organizations have tried their bit in terms of experimentation. I think the frontline workforce model itself, or the concept itself, is under serious pressure. I can give you the example of a company in the space, Aegon Life, which doesn't have frontline workforce now. So all that the organization has is about 250 employees, and they sell all their products digitally. On the one side, we spoke earlier about how in some cases there are organizations which are competition, in other cases they are partners. A simple case is an organization like Policy Bazaar, which controls more than half of the online sales of insurance. Now, if they have gone to that extent and they are able to influence how selling is done, the question is, why would a frontline field force be kind of entertained or even be given an audience by customers? During COVID, and this is something I was reading up recently, Life Insurance Corporation, a typical government-run behemoth, launched an app to help hire agents. If they can go that way, obviously the expectation and the need is for all the other players, which actually contribute to less than 50-60% of the market. Life insurance alone has 40% market share. If they go that way, we don't have a choice but to revisit our models. What that app basically does is I don't need to go around in the market, going to people's houses, asking them to become advisors. If I know someone, I pick up the call and I say, hey, this can be done. Why don't you come on board? And then you have somebody with you. Okay. So the ability to attract young talent, I think, is extremely small, and it's reducing with every passing year. And I think we need to look at a model where maybe frontline workforce doesn't exist any longer in the times to come.
Interesting thought. One, as an extension of this, do you see frontline, because for the last few years, we've seen frontline expand as industry expands, as various industries expand. So do you see expansion, contraction, or kind of a steady frontline workforce? Secondly, I want to touch upon women employees, fresh graduates entering the looking for jobs, and even frontline can have experienced people as well, people with 2 or 5 or 10 years experience. Do you see a difference between the freshers and some people with 5-10 years experience in terms of being frontline employees and making that as a career to a leadership role? And the second part is women in general.
Yes, I think depending on the evolution of the organization, to say that have they expanded their entire business model and the business potential, and they've now been able to capture the market where they want to really be there. If they've met that, then maybe they would be looking at consolidation, and they may be looking at the entire workforce itself being managed differently. But for organizations which are still trying to gain market share, I think we will continue seeing expansion. We continue to be the sunrise industry. We have seen a lot of other industry professionals also joining insurance, despite being employed in say telecom, banking. Sorry. So we're continuing to see that people are interested in making a career in insurance. Mm-hmm. Yes, I think the longevity of their stay is something that can be questioned, and maybe they're not able to make their mark, and hence they kind of try and make the shifts. So I think that's something that we're experiencing, but I don't think we will suddenly see the shift of the frontline sales to a very large extent. Okay. I think we're a good 5 to 10 years away. Just to take Nagina's example, right? We've seen the banking sector really gain from once a banker, always a banker, entry-level person rising the ranks and being the CEO of an organization. Insurance is yet to see that. I don't think any of the insurance CEOs are the ones who've risen the rank and become a CEO. We've had people come in from other sectors, other industry who've come in and taken the mantle of being a leader in an insurance setup. So I think that is something that we're yet to experience. Until such time, I don't think this model is going to go away. Okay. In fact, a lot of organizations, including ours, we are trying to see creative ways in ensuring the tenure of a salesperson to be a salesperson for the longest time. One, giving them various career milestones and pit stops within the career of being a salesperson, and also for us to ensure that we try and create a leadership pipeline in such a way that we will identify that next CEO amongst the frontline sales population. Now, coming back to the second point that you asked in terms of youngsters and in terms of looking at women employees, yes, I think gender diversity has been a challenge in the sales roles for a fairly long time. Insurance being a complex product, insurance also being slightly a harder product to sell, we do see women shying away from taking it as on a first career choice. But I think we've made certain inroads. For example, we've got something called as an FG Shakti program, which is really looking at getting back employees or women employees in particular wanting to return back to their careers who've taken a break. And that channel is only supporting women employees, trying to create that channel across the country. And it's a fully remote working model where they can choose to continue working while managing their other responsibilities. So yes, I think there is a long way to go. I don't think we've got it all. And to Jay's point, I think a lot of creative solutions are being tried out. I think we are being as ingenious as possible every year. I think, but we yet to mark or yet to really get that magic potion on for insurance.
So Manoj, if I may just add to what all my friends in the insurance industry stated, and having a little bit of exposure in that industry myself. And this will not only hold true for the insurance industry, but for largely all the industries. Some industries like consumer do the consumer shapes the industry. It is what you want, sort of is what the industry produces. I think more and more as time passes by, and the kind of workforce that we will have, and people who the kind of people who will need to be employed, I think insurance will also become an industry that the consumer will shape. So if the consumer is a 23-year-old traveler who wants to have only purpose in life is not to own a house or a car, but to basically just travel around the world, will need a travel insurance. And that will correlate or transcend into the employees that you will hire. So not fair actually to say whether frontline will exist or not, but I think the frontline will be a mirror or a shadow of what the consumer will look like. So I think, and so will be the case with the banking industry. If people want in the banking industry, the generation that lies ahead wants one-touch solutions on a smartphone, the banking industry has no choice but to shape itself to the consumer needs, and then that transcends into the ability to hire that talent. So I think it's an evolutionary process in my mind, where it is time for even complex industries like insurance and banking, which has been always chip on the shoulder, that there are no guardrails now. We are hiring for our digibank people from everywhere and anywhere. And that's a result of what the consumer asks, and the consumer is pretty much forcing us to shape our industry and our products and our strategies.
Very interesting. Of course, NSE Academy would attract a large number of students and freshers. But do you see some level of interest among people with some work experience, 2 years or 5 years or something, to get that additional training or that specialized training and make an entry into this industry? Is any such trend there?
Yes, Manoj. In fact, our spectrum ranges right from secondary school, from class 9, 10th, when we work with state boards and CBSE, helping students get financial knowledge as a subject in school, as an optional subject, and ranges up to mid and senior career, professional and executive education also. So just to answer your question, yes, over last few years, we've seen a lot of demand coming in from organizations itself in terms of helping employees upskill themselves as they move between segments. And some of the examples I can tell you, and to Jay's question of an insurance company which purely works out of a model, I think the definition of frontline has expanded over time. If I were to go on a insurance aggregator platform and put in my details, the person who calls me up to follow up on my interest is the frontline salesperson for me, right? It may not be a physical person, but somebody who returns my call is the frontline salesperson. And you would be surprised to see that, in fact, a large insurance company reached out to us. They want experienced underwriters, specifically at the latter half of the month, because they know and they have seen the trend in the last 12 to 18 months that the underwriting applications are large at the end of the month. So they want people who can work part-time, remotely, experienced professionals, especially women who can remotely work from home, but they can do underwriter's job for the latter half of the month than beginning. Then it's a contingent workforce that they're developing. We've got requests for people who have experience in financial services, who could do a bridge course in cybersecurity with us. And a large professional services firm wants to employ these people because they have understanding of the BFSI industry, but with cybersecurity bridge courses or skills which are upskilling themselves to get jobs. So yes, we have seen a lot of demand coming in, not only at entry levels, but slightly 2 to 5 year plus kind of experience. And as our colleagues are mentioning, people from any industry, because the digital economy and the digital banking and these fintech companies coming into work, there is certainly a dearth of talent, specifically from one industry. But if you have customer orientation, if you have understanding of customer behavior, if you are empathetic towards a customer's need, and you have basic communication skills, I think coming from any background, be it liberal arts, you don't need to have an MBA for actually going into a profession like this. As long as you spend few years understanding few situations, managing few customers, and you understand how this all works, I think there's a lot of opportunity coming to this kind of job demand in the marketplace.
Any other interesting trend in Frontline that anyone wants to share with us here?
I think there is one bit of a disagreement on one of the points which I think we are talking about. There's a dearth of talent in this country with 130 crore population, young country. It reminds me of a poem, water, water, water everywhere, not a drop to drink. I think as a T.S. Eliot. So I think there isn't a dearth of talent in this country. That is the first premise I want to put. But we have responsibilities as stakeholders, as industry, as academia, and as parents in the social system. I think the three stakeholders have a large role to play. I think from an industry perspective, I would say that the eye for talent, how do we define a talent? Is the urban etiquette, English speaking the talent? Or we can really look at what talent means and invest in vocationalizing some of the the academic work that is there, and as industry partners with academia, and create help in honing this raw talent which is available. But in terms of basic knowledge and skill, I think there is no dearth of talent in India. There is abundant talent in India, but we have to play a role, I feel. Second, like for example, I'll tell you about more than a decade back, we started our frontline managers. We have a academy in partnership with Manipal, where about more than 2,500 frontline managers are honed. They come from various parts of the country, from tier 3, tier 4 rural areas. But it takes about a year to groom them. The National Defense Academy produces the finest officers for this country. So I think there's no doubt of talent, but we have a role to play. Second, I think though there's a lot of work which has happened in vocational education, but I think in the BFSI sector, I think there's still more work can happen in vocationalizing managerial and frontline work. That's the second point. I think as members of civil society, as parents, and in our own communities, there is some amount of social taboo around sales and relationship management for some reason. I think that's a space right from including our education bodies and parents. We need to contemplate, if we are going to produce leaders of tomorrow, people have to be groomed in social and influencing skills, and that's essentially what sales and relationship is all about. So that's my take on this.
So as large financial organizations, do you kind of segment your frontline staff to handle these different customer segments so that there is more empathy or more deeper understanding of that segment? Is that kind of specialization happening apart from the product expertise?
If we are in this industry where the success of a customer, I think it's a very noble industry, because in this industry we can be successful only when the customer is successful. I mean, maybe that's true for every industry, because without, whether it's a corporate, whether it's an individual, we do well when the customer does well. So empathy and understanding customers and really feel the customer is primary. I mean, we can teach banking, we can teach technology, but the core about the empathy to understand a customer, feel the customer, and also have the some of the social skills. At times, there people will maybe reject when you're born with a proposition, to deal with that anxiety. I think those are the areas where we have to look at. Specifically to your question, no, sir. I think as a it's not that for a senior citizen, somebody else, and to in our own experience, what we have seen, if we have selected the right set of people, essentially looking at one of them being empathy and bringing a certain drive and passion for the job, people are quite, I would say they're very resourceful. I mean, in my own experience, they and we have been hiring people from multiple industries. I mean, since the time I know, from 2005, we have branch managers coming from manufacturing, coming from FMCG, and they have grown to become business heads in this bank. So I feel people are resourceful, and given an environment, given a culture, it will work.
I'd like to add to what Soumendra just said. I think while it's a perspective to say that you are segmenting your customer, but what we need to realize, and just taking insurance as an example, you may be building that first connect, say, with a father, right? But then you also have the household to cater to. When you're looking at acquiring the customer for the first time, don't forget that you can reach out to the same customer to upsell and to sell another product that you already have. Then you're catering to a different persona in the same household.
Yes.
Right. So segmenting your workforce then to only manage a specific segmented population, maybe we run the risk to say that the person doesn't have the ability to connect with the other persona at home. Maybe the person, the same salesperson has to talk to a 20-year-old who's passing out and start educating them to say that why is it necessary for them to start early in investing in a product like insurance. So the sales employee needs to have the ability to connect with the 60-year-old in the household, to connect to a 20-year-old in the same household. Right. So segmenting to that extent may not be the right approach to take. But I think equipping your sales personnel, and to answer to one of your earlier questions that you asked, I think a product skill, the selling skills, etc., is something that is already hygiene in my view. Okay. Active listening and empathy. I think these two are critical skills that needs to get imbibed, because the pandemic has taught us that a lot of these digital skills is possible. We had the least amount of downtime, 24 hours. We were back to selling life insurance products because we had the power of data, we had the power of digitization backing us. But if we do not have necessary skills in the form of empathy, in the form of active listening, being imbibed, being trained, being coached into our frontline executives, then we're really looking at a very transactionary relationship management with the customers, as opposed to us wanting to be a lifetime partner with them, to really guide them, counsel them, coach them to really start making those financially prudent decisions.
Is the perspective for bankers, given the nature of your product, given the frequency of your transactions that you're doing, given the wider bouquet of products that a bank has, does that change the way you segment customers and frontline workers?
So if I may just add to Shweta's point as well, and segmentation will not be the answer, because you will have on one hand things like digital tech, data run as the centrifugal basis to every business, whether it is banking, insurance, those will become the new norm. When I was entering the workforce, the hotspot was to use the computers and use email. Now it is data, it is analytics, it is tech, it is AI, it's machine learning, and so on and so forth. That becomes the underlying principle. So therefore, how do you expect a 50-year-old salesperson, even if you segment it, to keep pace with what is underlying and core to any organization or business? So I think one would need to think of how do you cross fertilize and cross mobilize and take the best. So for example, the younger generation who would cater to your tech products and digi products would probably be far more tech savvy, whereas these 50-year-old, no age, no discrimination, I don't mean to say any of that, but the seasoned bankers would be more relationship led. So how do you bring the two together? With the programs like reverse mentoring, etc., will become norm for organizations to follow, where the younger people will have to impart tech skills, data skills to the seasoned people who've been in the industry for long, and vice versa. The customer relationship skills, the listening, the communication, the relationship management will have to flow through that. Segmentation, in my mind, is not a solution in a world which is going to be tech and data. Even we're like the late 90s kind of start your work life kind of people. For us, even also some of these things are overwhelming, where we've all worked with organizations who've been very tech and process oriented. So rest assured, for frontline people who worked, and especially for insurance and even some banks, it has to be cross fertilization and mobilizing skills and talents amongst and within the workforce versus segmentation.
That's interesting. So, but let me expand this thing and take it to Abhilash and ask you that, do your training programs and courses tend to be differentiated for large organizations versus small organizations, banks versus insurance versus NBFCs. So do you generally have more of similar programs or more of very kind of different programs?
So that's a good question, Manoj. In fact, underlying all our offerings, be it online or in classroom, for large institutions, small, for company sponsored or self-selected learning, is the science of learning behind everything that we do. And everything that we do is outcome based. Every learning intervention that we do in our certificate courses or long-term program with university partners, both internationally and domestically, the program that we do with companies have to be outcome based. So while we have a calendar of programs which are for self-selection, individuals can choose to opt for these courses. These are self-paced as well as faculty-driven. But our real joy comes in designing programs specifically with the organization, understanding how does their human capital need feed into the broader strategic interventions over a period of time. We would love to be the partners in growth for next 5 to 10 years, understanding the pain points today, but looking at more strategic vision for tomorrow, 5, 10 years down the line, because lifetime value of an employee is directly related to the lifetime value of a customer also. What we talk about relationship management, especially in banking and insurance for that matter. So yes, while we have a calendar of open programs which are structurally designed, what you call canned or vanilla offerings, different across technology, finance, different age groups and experience groups. But we also create bespoke programs specifically for segments of customers internally, which are employees of organizations. We spend time with HR, we spend time with business lines, we spend time with talent teams also. We have a model called STAR, which is sourcing, training, assessment, and retention. Most of our effort goes in helping organizations retain talent, because that is where the longevity or the return on investment of a talent comes in play. So that's what we do.
Okay. And what about the sourcing part? Is that also, I guess that would be customized for each organization?
Sourcing specifically, yes. So what we do, we run our own industry readiness programs and placement readiness program with universities and colleges. With more than 4,000 institutions we work across the country. Our curriculum is plugged into both graduate and postgraduate level across MBA, BCom, even liberal arts, engineering colleges, both on finance and technology. But we work with organizations, specifically insurance companies, housing finance companies, retail banks, on frontline recruitment for freshers. On a regular level, we have close to 10, 12 active banks and financial institutions we work with. That is specifically with the demand and the need for the customers in the bank, and we create specialized program for them.
People coming out of training programs from NSE Academy and similar organizations versus the pressures that you get from colleges, whether it's an engineering college or a management college or an arts college. How does your engagement with them to prepare them for that organization, for your organization in different roles? How do you customize that? Because are these two sources, do they need different treatment, or can you put them in the same funnel?
So I think I'll answer slightly differently. Does it need a different way of induction and onboarding? If that's the question, I think the answer would be no. No and yes. I'll tell you why it's no. No, because I think we have a set of individuals who are wanting to make a career with you, probably taking a route of either coming through an MBA school or coming from the NSE Academy. So the intent is there, right? The intent is common to that extent to start a career with you. As a resource or as an organization, the resources that you would probably make available to them may slightly be customized. When I say customized, say someone coming from an NSE Academy probably has a higher understanding of the nuances of an insurance industry versus someone who's coming from an MBA institute may have had 1 or 2 chapters of insurance, as opposed to having an understanding of what the working of an insurance organization is. What does underwriting mean? What does risk mean? How do I then, plan and sell to a client, a need-based selling to a client, right? All of those are maybe terminologies that they have learned, understood, but they don't probably have a deeper understanding of it, which maybe, institutes such as NSE are better equipped to provide to them. So I think somewhere getting both these set of, entrants into your organization at the same page for them to understand the nuances of how your organization works, nuances of what is the interdependencies between different departments and functions. That's what is required. Otherwise, I think the entire onboarding process and getting them familiarized with the ways of working is going to largely remain common.
Jay, any other thoughts?
So, Manoj, we've actually experimented with these models in the past. My sense is, yes, there is a higher probability of early success when somebody comes through this route as compared to, let's say, somebody coming directly from a B school or engineering college, because there's a certain conditioning and there's a certain willingness which is already tested. So you hope that the person coming through this route has a greater awareness of the industry. But I would believe that post 3 to 6 months is when the real test comes up, because on another point which has kind of come up from the other panelists also is the fact that as a frontliner, my competition, or other as an employer, my competition is not just with other insurance companies or other banks when it comes to holding a frontline resource. What they're really looking for beyond a point is ease of doing the role that they have been hired for. Just like all industries keep looking at the government for ease of business, all people at the frontline level are looking to leverage and use their skills to the best of their abilities. But if there is a choice between going to an edtech company, which also has to sell memberships, which also has to sell subscriptions, versus selling an insurance product, and if the edtech company has its entire backend wired up, which most startups these days do, the ease of selling a product of that nature is much, much easier than an insurance product.
Yes.
And hence at the end of the day, if I am going to do direct selling, and the skill set that I'm bringing to the table is my ability to communicate, to negotiate, to kind of build a relationship, it can be used across sectors. So that's something we have to keep in mind, that getting an entry into the organization is good, but how do I make sure that he or she stays with me and doesn't go completely out of the sector also?
Good example, very good example. Do frontline workers actually drive or influence the strategy in some way, the entire organizational strategy? What kind of inputs or what kind of direction do these frontline people give? Because ultimately they are customer facing and they are the first level of customer feedback, which then becomes big data, which then is analyzed and mined and whatnot. But maybe that takes time, maybe not all the data is captured. So how are frontline workers kind of guiding all this transformation and digital transformation and business growth?
See, these days we talk about 48s and 24s. So there is a WhatsApp video going on saying that how at 24, essentially it means that 24s are the ones who are sitting in the office and 48 are the ones which are there out on the field, and let's assume the temperature outside is 48. And so how a 24 can support 48, right? And we have actually taken it up as a part of our strategy, stating that whatever we do here, it should result into 48 on the ground for them to be successful. Now, the world is changing at a very, very faster pace. I mean, we were talking about some point in time personalization. Now it is hyper personalization. Mediums of selling, be it digital, be it automation, everything is getting changed, etc. Now, whatever we implemented here, if at all the person on the ground is not able to really exercise it holistically, then there is a problem. It just remains on paper that there is something that you have done which is very, very novel and innovative, but it is not reaping any results. So what we have done as a part of the strategy is that we have this periodic so-called sub-strategy meets. Okay, and wherein we invite people to come in, the frontline sales guys who are top performers, to actually come and talk to us, stating that what are the challenges that they are facing on the ground. And what we do is that there is a representation from all the functions in 24, be it IT, be it ops, be it HR, be it finance. And, we actually, it's a kind of an elongated process where we get into the depth of it, try to understand point by point the challenges that they are facing. And we actually take a commitment from our side that we have understood these challenges. What are the steps that what we are going to do to ensure that the bottlenecks are actually completely removed? We go back to them with a time frame that come so and so date, you will hear from us. If not, then you can definitely escalate it. So the idea and the thought process is that we will partner with them in this journey, and we tell them saying that we are all in this together. And it is not that, be it products, even to the extent of the fact that we have actually gone back to people on the ground, frontline sales force, and I've actually checked with them saying that what kind of a products will help you to sell. Okay. So instead of they mentioning the technicalities of it, they can just say that, okay, I mean, they are exposed to competitor products, etc. They would come back and say that these are some things that we would possibly want it as a part of our bouquet of products. And that goes to an input as to my products team. And thereafter, they start thinking about those redefining and redesigning those products. And eventually it gets implemented. So exactly reverse mentoring, somebody said, all these things, we have kept it as a part of, this. So we also look at saying that, okay, does it really reap any results? I mean, of course, ROI, everybody talks about it. For us, it has, because we are the fastest growing life insurance company till November. So what we feel is that something that what we are doing is actually resulting into we doing well. And we intend to thereafter continue this.
Thank you, Praveen.
I think it's an extremely critical, I would say, competitive advantage, a facet of what you mentioned, that the alignment and perspective are common between the frontline and in the strategy, in a way, the strategy room. Like they say, and I was reading something in Rome, and they say the glory is in the battlefield finally. But the strategy room, the alignment of the philosophy and converting that in the battlefield is also equally important. So I think different organizations will be at different stage and differently around this area. But yeah, if we have a certain philosophy, if it is exactly converted by the frontline to the way we would envisage, that brings alignment and kind of operationalizes the strategy. But similarly, understanding of the customer by people who are in the strategy room is extremely critical. So I would not say any one is important.
That doesn't change.
But this alignment is critical.
Jay, can we have your response about frontline driving strategies and changes?
So honestly, Manoj, I think, yes, they will drive talent strategies. But beyond that, I think org level strategies will largely be defined by what kind of customer you're engaging and you're segmenting with. I don't think we are at that stage where a particular part of the workforce will define which way an organization is going to move.
But are they influencing more compared to earlier days?
I would say not in a very significantly different way. No, not really.
Okay, thanks.
I probably will again, answer this in a slightly different way. I think what we've now started seeing is, and what we should probably also focus a large effort on, is to convert our frontline sales employees and imbibe the necessary traits of them being a T employee, right? And when I say a T employee, they have the skill set of or the knowledge of knowing everything about their organization, and have the deep-rooted skill of going and convincing a customer to buy their product ultimately. So frontline sales employee is your investment expert, because he's going and talking about how are the funds being really put to use. They are ops expert, because they're supposed to go and tell that in the eventuality of an insurance being realized, how good is your organization in terms of claim settlement, etc. Right? Correct. So I think a very wonderful time for us as organizations to focus in developing these frontline sales executives as T employees, as opposed to the erstwhile conservative I employee. Right? I think that's where I start seeing the shift happening. We are experiencing that shift in Future Generali as we speak. And I think it's time for us to really embrace this concept much more deeply. And I'm sure this is what will be the way forward for several organizations.
Great. Thank you so much. And Akhilesh, what would you say? How are frontline employees and teams driving organizational strategy and change?
So I'll just mention, the colleagues have mentioned. So, good points. One is very critical thing to understand, that what is the kind of ecosystem as an industry. I'm not talking about companies. Company may have a approach, right? They may be succeeding in some particular way, but what is the kind of ecosystem we are providing either in the company or in the industry. If frontline people have to be looked at are people who are only going to push things, right? You bring the product, you do the training for 3 days, 2 days, 5 days, whatever it is. You expect certain thing, you are only measuring the output as productivity of the conversions and premiums, or the floats in banking, the CASA which he is getting, the floats which he is maintaining, or relationship, or whatever it is, right? I think it is very important to understand that how are we as industry wanting to create an ecosystem for frontline. How do we want to define the frontline? If we define frontline in a very particular way, they will be treated in a very particular way. And yes, organization can have a listening ability. Yes, every today companies like have the two-way communication. No company today, I think in today's age, can say that we are not having a two-way communication. Yes, two-way communication can happen. You can get nice good amount of information, ideas from them. But the point is that how, whether it actually defines the strategy of the organization. I think we are it is easy to say. My personal take is that we are far behind right now in that, because the definition, how do we treat, how do we define, and what do we prepare the front line is, that is our expectations have to be very clear if we have to really look at a reverse flow of ideas, thought process, they contributing towards. I know I'm from the GI industry, people here from even worked in banking from GI. The attrition is not less than 30, 35, 40, in some cases 50% of what we are actually. Today's topic is your frontline. So if we have to really create a frontline which is going to be more cost effective and being I'll say contributing towards companies overall growth. When I say growth, it involves strategy, ideas, process improvement, product improvement. I think we as an industry has to look at the ecosystem first. If we define the ecosystem, if we provide proper environment, I think I don't see any challenges. And there was a point I will just take. 1 minute is over. If you allow, I can take more 30 seconds. Otherwise,
10 seconds.
Yeah. Can I?
10 seconds, please.
Okay, 10 seconds. So, the growth actually for all the industries today, especially for the GI industry, when we are saying that it is growing at 18%, right? The growth is there in tier 3, tier 4 in a way where we can expand. In the large market or the metro, it is more, getting a pocket size, a wallet share, digital and other things. But, if we have to go there and the growth has to happen there, we have to actually define the ecosystem there and the talent which is available and how do we groom. I think Mr. Soumendra touched upon that point. If we do not define things, this may continue over a period of time, and we don't know where how exactly we would benefit from this. Then it becomes a force which is a push force. You bring them, if they are there for us, any person who's there for us for more than a year, at a productivity level of X level, he's good for us. I think then the story will stop there, and it may not build further. I think that is what my take is.
Yeah, that makes. What would you say about the expectations of in your experience of the frontline wanting to be influencers in the industry as opposed to being cogs in the industry, being a cog in the wheel?
Absolutely. I think I would treat the frontline teams as first responders who talk to a client, and they have a very important role. They are the voice of the customers. They obviously want to be heard. I think our frontline team needs champions. If we can, celebrate those champions who come from backgrounds which are aspirational, I think the word sales or frontline or customer facing roles, which today are not preferred, will be preferred by a set of the population, which, as Akhilesh was saying, is in tier 3 and tier 4 cities. Even universities and colleges which are not top ranked, there's a huge supply chain of talent available, which is not finding the right opportunities. So if we can celebrate people coming from these backgrounds, make them role models, especially women, who are part of the diversity circle, and they are great influencers. I think this generation wants to be heard. If you see their presence on social media, and other places, they want their voice to be talked about. And if they're talking to a customer, they're indirectly taking the customer's voice to you. So I think we should celebrate them, make them champions, create examples of similar success stories coming from not so privileged backgrounds who are really hungry for growth, and who, if 10 years back it was finance or MBA or engineering or medicine, why can't our simple undergrads today look at banking and financial services as breaking that ceiling and getting into that white collar job that they aspire from those family and those socioeconomic backgrounds? I think we have to go that way.
That's great. I think it's a fantastic discussion. All of you have touched on so many different interesting points. So let's call it a close. Thank you all very much for your interactive participation. And we look forward to discussing more such issues. I'm sure there are plenty more issues to discuss. So there'll be more forums and more opportunities to discuss them all. Thank you once again. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank
Such
you.
a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you all. It's a
Thank
pleasure
you all.
meeting you.
Nice.